Welcome, everyone, to the Military Chessboard channel. It is an absolute pleasure to have you joining us today for this deep dive into a global situation that is, it is developing at a genuinely breathtaking pace. I am your host, and I want to let you know straight away that I am joined in the studio today by our resident expert analyst, MC Morgan Jones.
Hello. It is great to be here.
We have a lot to cover, and our resident expert is going to help us make sense of it all. Our mission for this session is quite straightforward, even if the subject matter we're tackling is anything but simple.
That is right. We are going to unpack a rapidly escalating global crisis, one that started with a highly targeted military strike in the Middle East.
And we are going to trace its shockwaves all the way from the warm waters of the Strait of Hormuz to the freezing, active battlefields of Eastern Europe in Ukraine. But before we begin, I want to ask you a question directly. Have you ever wondered how a single geopolitical domino falling can ripple across the entire globe within a matter of hours?
It is a fascinating question, and it is exactly what we're looking at today.
It certainly is. Now, I want to be incredibly clear right from the start. Throughout this conversation, we are simply reporting the claims and information provided by regional media, the international press, and various military analysts.
We are maintaining absolute political impartiality. Full stop.
Spot on. We are not endorsing either side of this conflict. Our goal is purely to help you understand the vast amount of complex information coming out of these regions. We are going to take this slowly and deliberately, breaking down these monumental international events so they are easy to digest without getting bogged down in complicated military jargon.
Because looking at the sheer volume of information flooding in from all corners of the globe right now, it is easy to see how anyone could feel completely overwhelmed.
Oh, absolutely.
But when we take a step back and look at the sequence of events objectively, a very clear, albeit concerning, picture begins to emerge. It is a profound study in cause and effect on a grand international scale.
Okay, let us unpack this. The spark that ignited this most recent chain of events actually involves the United Kingdom.
Yes, it does.
Recently, the United Kingdom Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, made a highly significant announcement on the social media platform X. He stated quite clearly that London allowed the United States to use British military bases to launch strikes against Iranian missile depots and launchers.
And this was following a formal request from the United States.
Right.
They want to neutralize these threats directly at their source.
But making a political announcement in a secure office in London has immediate, real-world consequences thousands of kilometers away.
Which brings us to the immediate fallout in Cyprus. To really understand the gravity of this, we have to look at reports from the newspaper, the Cyprus Mail. They detailed the tense realities unfolding on the ground.
Yes, I read those reports. It sounded incredibly chaotic.
It was. Just before midnight on the 1st of November, British military bases located in Cyprus were suddenly thrust into a state of high security alert.
And this was not a drill.
Absolutely not a routine drill. Staff working at the facilities were ordered to evacuate the area immediately. You have to imagine the scene for the people stationed there in the middle of the night. Warning alarms are blaring in the dark, and personnel are being rushed away from their posts with very little information.
And the anxiety of those personnel was completely justified because shortly after that midnight panic, the Iranian news agency Fars reported that an explosion had occurred at a British airbase in Cyprus.
A very specific airbase, too.
Exactly. This detail is crucial because that specific airbase is not just some quiet outpost. It is widely known as a primary refueling point for United States fighter jets operating in the region.
It is a vital logistical artery keeping those jets in the sky.
So it is a direct operational asset.
Which brings a very sobering reality into focus. The entire network of Western military bases scattered across the Eastern Mediterranean is no longer just playing a supportive behind-the-scenes role.
They are on the front lines now.
They are now facing the very real, immediate threat of becoming direct targets in this escalating retaliatory spiral. When a nation opens its facilities for offensive operations, it inherently invites defensive or retaliatory strikes upon those very same facilities.
The geographical buffer is completely gone.
It is.
So with British bases in Cyprus suddenly scrambling in the middle of the night, you have to look at what actually triggered that level of panic. And that brings us to the 28th of October.
The beginning of the campaign.
Yes, a massive military campaign launched by the United States and Israel, which was dubbed Operation Roaring Lion.
The sheer scale of the arsenal deployed here is staggering to think about.
It really is. We are talking about the involvement of the aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln. For anyone trying to picture this, this is essentially a nuclear-powered floating city, positioning itself in the waters to project immense, undeniable power.
And from that maritime position, dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles were launched,
Tearing through the night sky to strike military targets deep within western Iran. And the reports coming out indicate that these strikes hit a wide variety of locations.
And tragically, this included a primary school in the city of Minab.
It is a devastating detail to read.
The physical scope of Operation Roaring Lion was vast, but the most consequential aspect of this campaign was a highly specific surgical strike.
The one in Tehran.
Exactly. A strike on a government complex situated right in the very center of Tehran. This was not a peripheral military base out in the desert. This was the administrative and political heart of the nation, heavily guarded and embedded in a bustling metropolis.
And the timing was no accident.
Not at all. The strike was precisely timed to coincide with a high-level, closed-door meeting taking place inside that complex.
When I was reading through the regional media reports from the 1st of November regarding the casualties of that specific strike, I have to admit it genuinely made me stop in my tracks.
The implications are enormous.
History-altering, really. According to regional media, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed in the blast.
Yes.
Furthermore, the reports state that the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the defense minister, and several other key figures within the government also lost their lives in that single moment.
Now, if these reports are completely accurate, and again, we must stress to you that we are relying purely on regional media narratives at this stage. This represents what military strategists would call a total decapitation of the Iranian leadership.
A total decapitation.
In the modern history of the Middle East, an event of this magnitude is entirely unprecedented. Taking out the very top tier of political, military, and spiritual leadership in a single, coordinated blow creates an immediate, massive power vacuum.
And an incredibly unpredictable environment.
Exactly.
The immediate reaction within the country was profound and swift. Iran's government quickly declared a period of national mourning. In the sudden absence of their top leader, they immediately formed a provisional leadership council.
Trying to maintain order and ensure the continuity of government operations.
Yes. The current president, Masoud Pezeshkian, stepped forward to the microphones and publicly vowed to retaliate against those responsible.
And the international reaction followed straight away.
It did. Russian President Vladimir Putin sent formal condolences to Tehran and strongly condemned the targeted strike.
The geopolitical lines are being drawn very boldly right now. But from an analytical standpoint, the question that is fascinating military minds around the world is not just what happened, but how it was actually achieved.
How do you pull something like that off?
Right. How do you find, target, and strike a secret high-level meeting in the middle of a sprawling capital city like Tehran?
Here is where it gets really interesting for anyone fascinated by modern intelligence. We have to look at the publication MK, which provided a brilliant analysis of the intelligence masterclass that guided this operation.
Because this was absolutely not a spontaneous, spur-of-the-moment decision.
Not a chance. The preparation required for a strike of this extreme precision would have taken months, and quite possibly up to an entire year of silent observation.
The analysis highlights that the Central Intelligence Agency played a foundational role in this effort.
They would have been meticulously tracking the daily movements, testing the security protocols, and mapping the private routines of the Iranian leadership day in and day out.
The underlying strategy here relies on immense, disciplined patience. When intelligence agencies are dealing with high-value targets, they do not want to try and pick them off individually over a long period.
Because doing so simply alerts the others.
Exactly. It causes them to change their routines and drive deeper underground into fortified bunkers. The golden moment strategy is about waiting, watching, and waiting some more.
Until that one precise window opens up where the entire leadership structure gathers in a single vulnerable room.
And confirming that the golden moment has finally arrived requires a massive, multi-layered intelligence effort.
You have to be absolutely certain. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal have reported on the 4 distinct pillars of intelligence that would have to perfectly align to authorize a strike like this.
Let us break those down.
Let us do that. Think about the sheer audacity of the first pillar, human intelligence. We are not just talking about a spy looking through binoculars from a distance.
No, this requires actual operatives embedded deep inside Iran's own logistics and security networks.
People risking their lives to notice something as subtle as a change in the catering order for a government building, or a sudden shift in the rosters of elite security guards.
But human intelligence alone, while vital, is never enough to authorize a strike of this magnitude. Human sources can be flawed, or they can be compromised.
Which brings us to the second pillar.
Electronic reconnaissance. This involves sweeping the entire area around the suspected target for anomalous activities.
So analysts are looking for sudden spikes in security communications or unusual changes in regional power usage.
Or the sudden, quiet deployment of anti-aircraft systems around a specific city block.
Then comes the third pillar, radio intercepts. This is the act of actively listening in on the communications of the security details and the military personnel coordinating the gathering.
They are grabbing invisible signals out of the air.
And finally, the fourth pillar provides the undeniable visual proof satellite imagery. This means taking high-resolution photographs from space to visually confirm the arrival of specific armored vehicles and the physical presence of the targets entering the building.
And once those four pillars align and confirm the target, the execution phase begins. And this is where the sheer technological advantage becomes overwhelmingly apparent.
The operation reportedly utilized Israeli F-35 stealth fighter jets.
These are essentially flying supercomputers designed to evade advanced radar detection.
But they did not operate in a vacuum.
No, they use sophisticated electronic warfare capabilities to essentially blind the Iranian air defense systems. By sending out invisible signals to scramble the radar and communications of the defenders, they made the radar screens show nothing but static.
Incredible.
This paved the way for precision weapons to be launched from a safe distance, drastically minimizing the physical risk to the pilots conducting the strike.
Striking in broad daylight right in the center of a heavily fortified capital city, that is a massive, undeniable statement.
What is fascinating here is the psychological blow it delivers to any leadership structure. It is a profound strategic message broadcast to the entire world.
What does that message say?
It loudly declares that there are no absolute red lines anymore. And no matter how deep the bunker is dug or how thick the reinforced concrete is poured, nowhere is truly safe. It fundamentally alters the perception of personal security for any leadership operating anywhere in the region.
Naturally, an event of this staggering magnitude demands a response, and that brings us to Iran's retaliation.
Yes.
The Iranian forces launched a broad operation they titled Operation True Promise 4. The targets were widespread, aiming at United States military bases situated in the region, as well as various Israeli cities.
The geographical footprint of this retaliation was vast,
Actively affecting nations right across the Middle East, including the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Iraq, and Oman.
While the physical missile strikes are the most visible part of the retaliation, the true vulnerability of the global system lies in its economic arteries.
And when we look at the Middle East, no economic artery is more vital to the globe than the Strait of Hormuz.
Let us take a close look at the Strait of Hormuz. For those who might not have looked at a map of the region recently, this is an incredibly narrow waterway connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean.
At its narrowest point, it is only 33 kilometers wide.
It is a tiny geographical bottleneck for global energy. Yet on the 1st of November, vessel traffic moving through that strait plummeted by nearly 70%.
A 70% drop.
A catastrophic disruption to global logistics. To understand why the massive shipping conglomerates stopped their vessels so suddenly, we have to look at the immediate, terrifying threats developing in the water itself.
We have a very clear, alarming example of this with the commercial shipping vessel, the Skyline.
Yes, the Skyline incident.
This is a massive tanker flying the flag of Palau. It was navigating the waters just 5 nautical miles north of Oman's Kasab port when it was suddenly attacked by an Iranian drone. Now, I want you to have a think about the human element in all of this high-level geopolitical maneuvering.
It's so easy to forget the people involved.
Exactly. There were 20 crew members on board that ship just trying to do their jobs and get home to their families. 15 of them were Indian nationals and 5 were Iranian. Reports indicate that 4 of those crew members were injured in the drone strike.
When a civilian commercial vessel is struck like that, it sends immediate panic through the boardrooms of the entire global shipping industry.
And this panic was actively amplified by explicit public warnings, was it not?
It was. A member of Iran's Expediency Discernment Council went on national television and explicitly warned the world that absolutely no United States ships are allowed in the Persian Gulf.
And they backed up those televised threats with direct, intimidating action on the water. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps began broadcasting stern warnings over very high-frequency marine radios, telling commercial vessels in the area to turn back immediately.
The economic shockwave of this tiny 33-kilometer bottleneck closing up is massive.
I want to connect this directly to you listening at home because this directly impacts your wallet and your cost of living. Major global shipping giants like Germany's Hapag-Lloyd and France's CMA-CGM immediately paused their operations in the area.
They simply cannot risk their multi-million-dollar ships and their vulnerable crews.
As a direct result of that fear, Brent crude oil prices spiked by 10% in over-the-counter trading. Now, over-the-counter trading basically means the private direct trades happening between massive financial institutions outside the formal stock exchanges.
That spike pushed the price to around $80 a barrel.
And market analysts are raising the alarm, warning that if this situation is not resolved quickly, we could easily see prices hit $100 a barrel. You will feel that pinch straight away at the petrol pump, and you will feel it in the rising cost of everyday goods at the supermarket.
However, looking closely at Iran's strategy here reveals a fascinating and potentially dangerous contradiction.
What is the contradiction?
Well, the Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 30% of the world's daily traded oil. We are talking about massive, vital exports from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. But here is the paradox they are facing. China is by far the biggest buyer of Iranian oil.
Right.
By closing the strait and threatening global shipping, Iran risks severely damaging its own fragile economy. They rely heavily on exporting around 1.65 million barrels per day.
So if they cannot get those barrels out onto the open ocean, their economy suffocates.
Exactly. Furthermore, by disrupting the flow of oil to Asia, they run the very real risk of angering their most vital geopolitical and economic ally, Beijing.
So, what does this all mean? We have seen how a strike in Tehran leads to a drone attack off the coast of Oman, which then drives up the price of your petrol. But what does this mean for the rest of the world?
To answer that, we need to shift our geographical focus all the way to Eastern Europe.
Specifically to the ongoing brutal conflict in Ukraine.
This is where we see the unintended, far-reaching consequences of a distracted global superpower. We have an incredibly insightful analysis from a Russian military expert, Major General Vladimir Popov.
And what is his assessment?
He has been closely observing the shifting focus of Western intelligence agencies, and his conclusions are highly concerning for the Ukrainian armed forces.
To really grasp this, we have to talk about how satellite intelligence actually works in practice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Major General Popov points out that the physical mechanics of the satellites operated by the European Space Agency and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration do not change based on news events.
They are objects floating in space, following fixed physical orbits around the Earth.
They do not stop and hover. They still fly over the Middle East, taking pictures of Iran, then they continue their orbit over Syria, and then they fly directly over Ukraine. The cameras are still snapping high-resolution pictures, just as they always have.
So the advanced hardware up in space is not the problem at all.
Not at all. The real issue, the true bottleneck in this intelligence pipeline, is the human element down on the ground.
It is the complex processing of the data.
Yes. Every time a satellite passes over a conflict zone, it beams back an absolute ocean of raw data and imagery. But that data is completely useless until highly trained human analysts and massive computer server farms process it, decode it, and turn it into actionable military intelligence that a commander can actually use.
And right now, with the entire Middle East erupting into conflict, those limited data analysts are being ordered by their superiors to prioritize decoding the imagery coming out of Iran and the Persian Gulf.
They urgently need to know where the Iranian missile launchers are moving today.
Consequently, the vital data coming from the skies above Ukraine is being pushed down the line, relegated to second or third priority in the queue. You have to imagine these analysts sitting at their desks entirely focused on the Middle East, while the folders of data regarding Russian troop movements pile up waiting to be opened.
The consequences on the ground for the Ukrainian armed forces waiting for that information are severe. In modern warfare, receiving intelligence 2 hours late can be the absolute difference between successfully repelling an armored attack and suffering a devastating loss.
The information will still eventually reach Ukraine, but with a significant, potentially lethal delay.
Now, European allies, specifically Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, will absolutely continue to cooperate with and support Ukraine.
But the intensity, the speed, and the overall effectiveness of the situational awareness provided to the Ukrainian front lines will inevitably drop as resources are stretched thin.
And as Major General Popov rightly notes, this sudden shift in the West's attention heavily benefits Russia.
The West's military and intelligence apparatus is utterly consumed by the escalating crisis in the Middle East, giving Russian forces a massive potential blind spot to exploit on the Eastern European battlefield.
It is a perfect, albeit grim, demonstration of how interconnected the global security apparatus truly is today. A sudden crisis erupting in one hemisphere entirely drains the analytical resources required to fight a war in another hemisphere.
That brings us to the end of today's deep dive. We have covered an immense amount of ground together. We traced how a single, highly coordinated, and technologically advanced intelligence strike on a government complex in Tehran set off an unstoppable chain reaction.
We saw how it led to immediate missile exchanges across sovereign borders.
We examined how it brought the vital global oil shipping lanes through the 33-kilometer-wide Strait of Hormuz to a grinding, anxious halt.
And finally, we uncovered how this Middle Eastern crisis ultimately slowed down the absolutely vital flow of processed satellite data reaching the vulnerable front lines in Ukraine.
It is an incredible amount to process, and the ramifications will be felt for years to come.
I want to leave you with one final mind-bending thought to consider long after we wrap up today. With modern conflicts relying so heavily on the real-time processing of massive amounts of satellite data, we have to ask ourselves a very difficult question. Will future global wars be decided not by who has the most cruise missiles or the most advanced stealth fighters or even the largest standing army, but simply by who has the most server space and the most human data analysts to decode the battlefield before the enemy does?
That is a phenomenal question, and one that I really hope you will all have a think about. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. If you found this breakdown helpful in understanding these complex global events, please press the like button. We would also love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment sharing your perspective on how you see these situations developing in the coming weeks. And please make sure to subscribe to the Military Chessboard channel so you never miss our future deep dives into the events shaping our world. Stay curious, stay informed, and we will see you next time.